How did you get to New York City?
Great question. Okay. I knew that and I still didn't prepare anything. It's, I guess, a question of how far back do you want me to go? I'm from California, Central California, near Yosemite National Park. I started doing improv in college. Then right after college, moved to Chicago to do improv all the time. And then in 2018, I auditioned for SNL.
Whoa.
Yes. Yeah. And so there was so I auditioned in Chicago. I got flown out to screen test for the show, then got hired as a writer, and so moved to write for SNL. And yeah, I wouldn't have ever thought I'd move to New York. It never really crossed my mind as a place for me to live.
Yeah.
But yeah, it worked out, and I love it now. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of any other sequences. Moving to New York itself was like a little bit of because I found out I got the show, and then like maybe a week and a half later, I had to move.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So it was like September of 2018 or something like that. And then like last second, even like the day before, I was like, okay, cool. I'm moving to New York like tomorrow. This is pretty crazy, blah, blah, blah. And then I like double checked my flight, and I was like, oh, wait, no, I'm moving to New York today. I have to get to the airport in like 2 hours. And I was like, oh, shit. And luckily it already started like packing. So I like my roommates at the time, they were like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's see what we can do. And just kind of like put some stuff in the thing, got an Uber to the airport, and then moved to New York. Like, wow. And they put us up in a hotel for the first month. And then then worked the first like 2 weeks of the show, and then we had a break, and then I went back and moved the rest of my stuff here. And luckily I had just gone through like a big breakup, so I didn't have much shit. So like I was living in like a bedroom with like two other improv guys, and just moved, like rented a car, moved all my stuff out. And then like 2 weeks after that, and then I was like looking for apartments. I had to get used to like New York apartment rent prices. It was because I had only ever like had great deals. The most I ever paid in Chicago was like $760 for like a room. I always had roommates and stuff. And then I found an apartment on like 106th Street on the west side, and I lived there until like 3 months ago. And then my partner and I just moved in together down the street from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did the SNL opportunity come about in the first place?
I had moved to Chicago in 2011, right after college, and just did a ton of improv, did a ton of like sketch comedy, mostly improv. I gotta say though, like I moved to Chicago because I wanted to do improv comedy, like to perform improv.
Yeah.
And was at IO and Annoyance and Theater CIC and a little bit of Second City towards the end. SNL would come through mostly every year. Sometimes they'd skip a year, but you knew that during the summer, more likely than not, SNL was going to come to see showcases at Second City and IO. And I think once or a couple times they did it at Annoyance. And so there was just kind of like that knowledge all the time. A couple years before but once again, I was like mostly interested in improv. And even though obviously it's a lifelong dream to like work at SNL.
Yeah. I
just had never really been like, okay, the thing that I need to do to get there is to come up with characters and then try to do the audition. And IO, which was kind of like my main place that I was at, there Sharna, who owned the theater, she's like she invented IO with Del Close like in the 80s, and She had, uh, because so many people had come from IO to SNL through showcases, that she kind of set up some mini showcases that was just for her to see people, and then bigger showcases, blah, blah, blah. So there was kind of like a little system in place that, like, if you played your cards right and like you were funny, you could go up through these showcases to get to the big showcase for when SNL comes. So a couple years before I had tried, did some characters, including one that like later was I wrote for SNL. And like auditioned for Sharna, but I just at the time I didn't have the discipline, or like I wasn't like putting as much effort into it. I was like, well, I'm a funny improviser, so if I write this down, then it'll automatically be funny, and I don't really need to practice, and I can kind of fuck my way through it, you know. But and then I did it one time for Sharna at one of these smaller showcases, and nothing happened. And then 2018, I again break up. Like we were living together, moved into a place, and I just had a lot of time on my hands. Yeah. And I was like, you know what would happen if I actually fucking tried this time? Not just be like, oh, you know, I'm fun, you know, I'm gonna, you know, blah blah blah, but like actually like, no, what if I really, really put as much effort as I can into this? I make this my thing and my goal. Yeah. And so I would sit down and I would write characters. I would ask friends to be on their shows. I would go home and rewrite the characters based on the feedback that I was getting at the shows. This is so basic. And if any stand-up is like listening to this, they're going, yeah, that's what it is. But but at the time, and after doing like, at that point, like almost 11 years of like improv straight, like from college through all my whole Chicago time, it really was like a thing that had to be learned. And like honestly, a work ethic, like, was of like, I always obviously had a work ethic of improv, which I was really passionate about, and getting better at improv. But once you do the classes and blah, 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 you're like working on instinct a lot. Yeah. And it's the work in improv is to get better at the thing, and you're not trying to come up with a completed thing that you can work on, and perform over and over and over again. Like there was a thing in my head of like, oh, if I got to do it twice, then it's not very good or something. But that was, so I came up with 5 minutes of characters, and just had put way more effort into it than I ever had, and did it for Sharna. Got word that, hey, I can't remember if I auditioned for her twice or once, but like it might have just been the once. And then she said, hey, when SNL comes this summer, you're going to be in the showcase. And I was like, oh, okay. Then that showcase came around, and that was a similar thing. Everything was like very last second. So showcase, like I found out on a Friday that I was maybe on a Thursday that I was going to be auditioning on Saturday. And so same thing, like it had been a couple months between them. So I like was brushing up on stuff, like asked to be on a few shows, and then did the showcase. And then the day after the showcase, the showcase itself was fun. There's a lot of great people in it. And then, and like, you know, it was weird. You could like kind of see, like, I was like, I think that's Michael Che over there. Like, I think that's Colin, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day we got like word that, I got a call from Sharna. She was like, hey, Eli, they want to get drinks with you. And I was like, okay. And I'd known from just friends that had gone through the process in years past that like, that was just a step. Like they get a drink with you to make sure you're not an asshole or anything like that.
Insane.
Yes, exactly. And just, you know, so we went to that. It was at the Ritz-Carlton. I remember I was working a day job at the time, and my office was in the Hancock building in Chicago. And I went to get the drinks, and I'm like talking to Lauren, like, whoa. And so, it was the way that it worked out was they kind of did it like speed dating style, where you go and you sit down with, like they had people like producers and a couple of the head written like supervising writers, and Lauren were there. They were bunched up, and so you buddied up with a friend, and then you went and talked to this group, and then the assistants came and they were like, hey, time to move on, and then you go and talk to someone else. But I was sitting outside to Lauren Michaels, and I looked over, and the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago was right across from the Hancock building, and I could see what I thought was like my office. Like I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the floor that my office is on. And it was a very surreal moment of like, oh wow, yeah. And I'm talking to Lorne Michaels, and then he's like, so where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from O'Neill's, California, sir. Yeah. Yes, and like he was so quiet, he was like mumbling.
Was it really?
Oh yeah, he was because he's 1,000 fucking years old. But it's intimidating in thought, but then you get there and you're like, oh yeah, he's like a human guy. He's small, like he's old. I could destroy him if I wanted to. No. But but then he was kind of mumbling. I couldn't hear. I was like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, and then someone would come and we go and talk to like Steve Higgins and other people or whoever. And then we kind of went back to normal life, but then knowing just again from friends having gone through that process, like, okay, like if you did that, it's a pretty good sign that you're going to get asked to come up like screen test. And so then a few months later, got that call as well, had to like go print out a bunch of like headshots and resumes for some reason. And then flew out. The cool thing about that year was there was a bunch of Chicago people that auditioned. Yeah. And it's like, especially after being there for like 7 years, seeing all your buddies that you like came up with, like out there with you, it's cool to be like, oh yeah, we did this. Like, it's crazy. Like, cause Chicago's very like, it's, I don't want to say it's not competitive, but it's very supportive.
Yeah.
Like, so it really, like, when people would get on SNL before who were from Chicago, I can only speak for myself, but the feeling was kind of like, oh my God, we did it. Like,
yeah.
Like, look at us, because it's like it's the often ignored comedy city, though it's so many great people come from there, and the scene itself is so great too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you thinking when you go out there for a screen test that this is your big shot? Did you care that much about the outcome of going through that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to say like, did I think it was my big shot? I was trying not to make it bigger than it was, but I was trying to have the mindset of like, this is really cool, and each step along the way, my thought process was, if this is as far as this goes, that's great, because this is like the big, I've been watching SNL since I was a child, and like love SNL, and like it's always been like, oh, that's the job.
Yeah.
Like that's the comedy job is to be on SNL. Well, and even as I say that, I think about all these other shows. I was like, oh no, I want to be on Conan or The Simpsons or any of these other things. Like, but it is like, that was the one that when I started doing improv, I could see a clear path towards SNL of like improv sketch, Chicago, IO, Second City, SNL. It felt like there was, if not the only trajectory, that was a trajectory. And even though that's not always at the forefront of your mind, it's often in the back of your mind, because you do have these ideas for yourself about what you want to do and where you want to be. And but I've often found that if you let it get to be that big, like if I was going in there thinking like, oh, this is my one shot, like, oh my God, then it obviously wouldn't go well. And it's also not the person, that I am either. I don't know. There's a part of your brain that you can kind of turn off and be like, this is what I'm doing right now. Try to be in the moment and just do the best job that you can. That being said, it's a nerve-wracking experience to go, because when you screen test, you're like on this home base, like the stage where like the host does the monologue and you're doing your little characters and they're all right there. And like Lorne and the head writers and producers and all that stuff. And they're kind of like shrouded in shadow a little bit. So you can't like quite see their face, but you're like, and yes, everyone says like, they're not going to laugh. Like, don't worry, they're not going to laugh. Like, so don't worry about getting laughs. But, yes. So my first character, I went out and it was also a character that I'd done a bunch. Like, it worked at I had done it to get into Second City and that audition. And I was like, and it always like killed, like at my showcase in Chicago, it like destroyed. And I was like, here we go, time to crush again. And then I do it and it is completely crickets. And I'm like, oh, but then it is just that thing of like, okay, like they said this was going to happen. And I guess it's true. Like, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, they don't laugh at anyone except for me, you know. I'm actually really fucking funny. I don't think they know that yet. So first character crickets, and I was like, all right, like, but then the second character I started off, and then there's like a turn, not even a turn, but like then there's like kind of a joke line, and that did get a big laugh, and I was like, oh shit, like. And that honestly threw me off, and I forgot the rest of the character. And then, I mean, this probably happened in the span of a half a second, but it was a good thing. It was like, I guess it just goes back to like the effort that I had put in, because I had done these characters by now like 40 times or something like that, and did kind of know them inside and out. And so then when I did like, fuck up, forget my line, I was like, hey, what's another line? Okay, say that line. And then by the end, time at the end of that line, I'm remembering like, oh, okay, this is the line I skipped. I can put that here and it's actually okay. And so did that mental gymnastics, and then it felt like I had normal good laughs throughout, which felt really good. And then it was cool. Yeah. Leaving. I mean, I would, at the beginning of the day, you had to stay all day, until everyone went. But then it was kind of like the rest of that day, I was like, great, I did it. Like that was a goal that I had my whole life, checked off. Awesome. Feel really good about it. And like some of the crew guy, like I was going to the bathroom, one of the like camera guys or something was like, hey man, great job in there. And I was like, okay, cool. That feels good. And again, it's like, if this is as far as this goes, I feel good. I'd done enough like auditions for, Chicago Fire or whatever to know that like, hey, that has nothing to do with me at this point. I did what I do, and either they want it or they don't, which is an easy thing that's easier said than done. Yeah, but it was great.
So then what happened?
So then we go back to normal life. Oh, sorry. No, then we go and there were like 8 of us from Chicago that flew out. There are probably like maybe 20 total people that like screen tested that year. And that night, all the Chicago people, they gave us like a stipend. So we all went out to dinner, and it was great. It was really fun. And then like at dinner, I get a text message from my agent at the time going like, hey, like, they want to keep you for another day. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm looking around and it's like seeing who else. Okay, like, is anyone else looking at their phone? And there were like my friend Allison, who was like sitting right next to me, like answered her phone, like went outside. I was like, okay, great. So a couple other people. Actually, it was funny. We were all sitting in a row.
Whoa.
Anyway, so 4 of us from that Chicago group got kept to do meetings. Then we got kept. We did meetings like all day long. Like met with writers, other producers, a lot of people we'd already met, but just kind of had more in-depth conversations. Couple producers that we hadn't met yet. It was crazy. And it actually, in those meetings, almost everyone, I think everybody except for maybe one person who honestly should have gotten it, everyone got hired at the show at some point. Not that year, but like in that meeting was me, Allison Gates, who got hired that year, Alan Linick, who got hired that year, Ego Wodum, who got hired that year, Bowen, who got hired that year as a writer, Lauren Holt, who got hired, I think, the next year to be on the show, Chloe Feynman, who got hired the next year to be on the show. There might have been one other person, but I think that was it. But everyone, except for one of the funniest people in the world, who's doing just fine now, FYI, but like only one guy like didn't get it, but he was in the mix, I know, for being in the cast up until the very last second. But he's the funniest guy in the world. Anyway, he's going to be okay. He is okay, and he's going to be okay. And so then we did those meetings, lasted all day. There's like a 2-hour version of the story that I could tell. But went back to Chicago, went back to normal life. The day before so then I fly to Sacramento to go to my cousin's wedding. I'm in the airport flying back to Chicago, and I get a text. The 4 of us that got kept, we had a text thread, and we were all just like, hey, if anyone hears anything, let the rest of us know, blah, blah. So the guy, Andrew, who ended up not getting the show, texted saying like, hey, I just got word. I'm flying out to LA tomorrow to meet with Lauren again. Did anyone hear anything else? This is what I'm hearing, blah, blah, blah. So I take that as like, oh, Andrew got it. Yeah. We're not going to be in the show. And it's like, as much as I had been telling myself, like, don't get too excited, like, this doesn't mean anything. This is just what's happening now. In those couple weeks or whatever, I had been like definitely saying that, but then also going like, man, wouldn't it be crazy? Wouldn't that be great? Like if that happened. And so then this was essentially me getting rejected, and I was very bummed. I was very upset, going like, you fool. Like, how could you fucking think you were going to be on SNL, you fucking idiot, you turkey. Fly back to Chicago. And then actually that temp job that I was working was, the day that after I came back to Chicago from my cousin's wedding was my first day as a permanent employee. They had just said, hey, yeah, we'd like to hire you full time. And I was sitting in like a training for this job. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And there was like, we're watching like a training video saying like, hey guys, no phones in this meeting, please. Like, what's it like to work at TechCo or whatever it was? I mean, I don't want to say the name of the company, but it was called SMS Assist. I don't even know if it still exists anymore. It was nothing. I was doing like data entry. And I get the call, and then I like take it, and I go out in the hallway as my agent at the time, and she was like, hey, like, so we just got word from SNL that, you know, they're not interested in you in the cast. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, she's like, they are interested in you for the writer's room, and, you know, there's lots of ways to move from writer's room, blah, blah, blah. I was like, wait, what? Like, she's like, yeah, they're interested in you as a writer. And I was like, what does that mean? I was like, are they offering me a job? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, hung up, called my mom, called my sister, and then like, why? There was another person. I had a friend who was like, we started at them together. She was an actor, so she was like, what was that? And I was like, I think I just got hired at SNL. And she's like, oh my God, what? And so then I waited for the next break, and I was like, what do I do? She was like, you got to leave, man. And I was like, oh yeah. So I like went into like the boss's office. I was like, hey, I think I got quit. And he's like, what? Why? I was like, I think I just got hired at SNL. And he's like, wait, what? He's like, is that where you've been? Because no one there knew I was even a comedian or anything like that. It was just like just a job I was doing. And so he like shut the door. He's like, wait, tell me the story. I tell him the whole story. He's like, yeah, dude, get out of here. And I was like, great. Left. I went immediately to Navy Pier, and I rode the Ferris wheel at Navy Pier, and it was great. And then on there is when my friend Allison called me, and she told me she got the job. It was like one of my best friends. And then my friend Al, we called her, and then we found out that the three of us got it. And then we were hired as writers, the three of us. And then it made sense of like, okay, they wanted us for writers, and then maybe Andrew's going to be in the cast. And honestly, I mean, my opinion, it was at a time when they weren't sure if Alec Baldwin was going to be doing Trump anymore. And my friend Andrew had a great Trump impression. So I think it was a little dependent on then. And then even when I got to New York and we were in the writer's room, it was like the first week was about to start. They hadn't made any casting decisions. So, and then at the last second, I think Baldwin said, yeah, I'll come back. And they didn't hire Andrew, which is insane.
So when you did your screen test and you're interviewing for a job on SNL, were you under the impression you either got hired in the cast or nothing? Help me understand how that system works. Is everyone sort of up for two jobs at the same time? Either you're going to be a cast member or you could be hired as a writer. How does that work?
I think it's a little bit that. Okay. Like, I think it's hard, and it may have even changed now because up until like a couple years ago, I was like, I had never heard of anyone getting hired via a writing packet, which they send them out every year, and people spend a lot of time. And I was always like kind of a waste of time because everyone comes in through auditions. But over the last couple of years, I have heard of one or two people getting hired through a packet. But at the time, it was very much like, yeah, you're kind of auditioning for two jobs. In my mind, you know, I was there because I was a performer for so long. Yeah. Like, I was there to audition for the cast, and I knew there was a possibility because people had gotten hired for writers from Chicago off of their audition as well. So I knew that was a possibility. And I do remember listening to a podcast, I think with 80 Bryant, or it was someone like that. And their advice was basically like, show you can write in your audition because that way they know, because even if you do get hired as a cast member, you have to write. Everybody writes. Like on writer's night, it's not like, unless, Keenan can not write if he doesn't want to, but like if you're a new cast member, you have to write. And it's also going to be oftentimes the only way you get on the show is if you write yourself a sketch, or a weekend update bit or something like that. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah, I came to realize that I got the much better job.
Is that right?
Yes, because when you're not in the show and you're a cast member, everyone knows you're not in the show. And then they write articles of like, why isn't so-and-so in the show or not? And then, but if you don't get a sketch in the show and you're a writer, no one knows.
Yeah.
Like, except for like the people that like do sleuthing online to see who wrote what sketch. But even those are like often like inaccurate. But yeah, so you have a little bit more grace to fail at the show if you're a writer, I think.
At any given time, roughly how many cast members and how many writers are there on SNL?
Man, when I was there, it was a lot. It was a very big room, so it was like harder. It was hard to get stuff on. It's hard to sometimes get stuff read at
like dozens of people or
dozens. Yeah, like 20. I think there were like maybe something like 18 writers and like 15 cast members or something like that. It was a lot of people. So like, and everyone writes like 3 or 4 things. So they're like on writer's night, there's like 50 sketches that get written and like 40 of them get read. Yeah. And this is when I was there. I think it's shrunk a little bit since then, but yeah. But it's a lot. It's hard to, not hard, but it was often, if you're new, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. So yours is always the first to get like pulled if you need to make time or something. Which when you're in there, outside it makes sense. But when you're there and you're staying up 40 hours straight, like writing your little skits and it doesn't get read, you can be like a little bit like, no, come on, mine's really funny. Like, read my things. Yeah.
I recently read a New Yorker profile of Lorne Michaels, weirdly, and one of the things that I remember they talked about in that profile piece is how something Lorne was intentional about in designing SNL is the supremacy and importance of the writers themselves in the creation of the show.
Totally.
Like they're on equal footing as the cast members because he regards writers as being sort of the soul of the show. I'd love to talk first of all, hear if you agree with that, and also just hear about your experience on that job.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that's the thing that people don't quite understand is like, because the cast is there and the cast does write a lot, but it is and some of the cast members went out, like A.D. Bryant, who I just mentioned, is one of the funniest writers, one of the best writers ever. Beck Bennett, Kyle Mooney, such great writers, obviously. Like everybody was a great writer. But the thing that I think most people don't understand about SNL is that the writers are also producers. So when your sketch gets chosen, you become a producer of your sketch.
Wow.
And often ways a director of it as well. So you go right from the meeting, they put the sketches up on the board, like these are the sketches that are going to be in the show. It's like a high school cast list, like blah blah blah. Again, maybe they've changed this since I was there, I don't really know. But then you do that and you go right into production meetings with all the heads of all the departments. So you got to say what costumes you want, you have to say what sets you want, you have to say what props you want, and then when the sketch is rehearsing, you're oftentimes on the floor with them, like giving actors notes. So like when I was there, I had to give like Oscar winning actors like notes of like, hey, could you say it a little bit more like this? Could you be a little dumber when you say that, like you're trying to do a good job. Could you do a worse job? And then like Adam Driver's calling you down to his dressing room to like ask you a question about the script or whatever. Like so that's like when, it's a skill that SNL writers have that I think if you've only ever written on like a sitcom, I mean, I could be totally wrong about this, but like you're a lot more involved with the final product than I think you are in other places. Because if you're in a writer's room for a sitcom or whatever, you're like writing the show and then with a bunch of other people and then if you're on set, you can have some say, but ultimately it's the director, I think, that has like final say. But in that sketch, the director of SNL is like they deal with the camera blocking, but if there's a camera block that you don't like as a writer, you can say like, hey, I want to do this. I want to be on this person here. And then we reveal this or whatever. And so that's like a language that you had to learn very quickly in order to like work there, is like, because most people come from stage. And so I had to change the way I wrote because all of my writing was like for the stage. Yes. And so then I was like, okay, but I can now learn to use this camera as like, to tell the jokes that I want to tell. Like the camera can be over here and then we cut to this and then that will be funny or whatever. Yeah, but it's, and then also just socially at the show, you know, the writers and cast are all there. Like you're all writing all the time. You're all talking to each other. Like on Tuesday night when you're writing, you're all hanging out. Like, you know, it's also the people that you socialize with the most while you're there, because it's the job's all you're doing basically. So, yeah, it is. I think, yeah, I find that to be very true. That it's, I felt it wasn't until like, you know, it's not like you're, I don't know. It's like you're friends with everyone that you work with. And then you're like, oh yeah, we're all coworkers. Then you get into the real world and you forget that half of them are full on celebrities. And you're like, yeah, you go to like the after party. I remember going to the after party, like after the show, and you're walking like towards the venue or whatever. And, there's a bunch of paparazzi outside, and they see you and they go, ah, and then they realize you're nobody and they go, oh, and they put their camera back down. Yeah.
I'd love to hear what it was like for you. Is this just extraordinarily thrilling, intimidating? What was it like first day, first year? How are you experiencing all that?
It was I mean, it was very fun. I loved it. It was, you know, it's difficult. It's like I said before, like if you're at the bottom of the totem pole, it's hard to get. If there's a sketch that needs to be pulled before the table, it's often yours.
Yeah.
I did have a lot of great, what I considered to be success of the show. I got some good sketches in that I really like loved and that have had like a little bit of a life of their own, which feels really wonderful. So, and then you know, it's weird. I think it would be weird to say that like I was really young when I was there, but when I was like 29 and 30, but I think, you know, going back, there's probably, well, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's hard to say. It was all a new experience for me. Living in New York was like a crazy thing too. Like, just because I'd never really lived here or spent much time here before. So it was like getting used to New York, getting used to the show. Luckily, the show always, you know, it took over every aspect of your life. So it wasn't like, I don't know, I wasn't like being distracted, like going like, well, I could go to this cool club or I could work at, you know, I could work at Saturday Night Live. Yeah, but it was a great time. I made a lot of wonderful friends. You know, the things that people say about it are true. It's not like, it has a reputation of being really hard and like being mean and stabbing in the back. And I don't think it's not like stabbing in the back. It's not that mean or that vicious or anything like that. But it is a machine, and it's a machine where everybody is extremely busy, and you have to do a show. You write a show on Tuesday, you have to perform the show live on national television on Saturday night. And so there's not a lot of time to like hold your hand or anything like that. And I think that's where it gets the reputation from. I think a lot of people are like, because shit will get cut. Like they'll try to change stuff if they're worried about something, maybe other things that, you know, if you're there, you might think like, well, my thing was so funny and everyone loved it, but then this thing that was less funny got picked to be in the show. That's not fair. And it's not fair, but at the end of the day, they're also not trying to make the funniest show possible. If, you know, they could if that was the goal, but it's a variety show. So they want to have a variety of different kinds of sketches. Which is the advantage of something that like I think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson like has, where like they're choosing the show, so they can choose just whatever they think. The only goal of that show is to put the funniest sketches on TV, and that's I think why that show's had a lot of success. Yeah, but yes, and then I at the end of the year, like I had a great year. I thought the feedback that I was getting was all very positive, and then that summer I found out that my contract wasn't getting renewed.
Whoa,
yeah, and I don't, you know. It's been a long time now, so like it was definitely a big blow. It sucked. Like, I really loved working there. I wanted to come back. I thought that, like, towards the end of the season, like, I had a lot of success early on at the show, and then there was like a midpoint that I wasn't getting as much stuff on, like towards the middle end of the year, like from September to Christmas, I had some big hits of the show. Then there was like a lull where I wasn't like getting anything on the show. And then towards the end, some shit was coming again. So I thought that I had a good thing, but like, yeah, I don't know. They never really got a reason why I didn't get renewed. Like, even when I would talk to friends of the show, they would be like, I don't know, like, I assumed that you would come back, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it was just a personality thing that like some producers didn't like me or whatever, which is like totally fine. It's their show. And it's also taken me 5 years to be able to say that, to be like, yeah, it's actually fine that I didn't go back. Yeah, but it was like a hard time. It was also especially hard time industry wise because there was like a strike against agents, and I got like I had just gotten like good agents when the show ended, or so yeah, when I started the show, and then like towards the end of the year, the WGA had all their writers fire their agents because there was like a dispute about packaging or something, and I was like, oh, okay, well, good thing I have a job, or else this would really suck.
Yeah.
But then couldn't work with agents at the same time I was fired, but. I don't know. Stuff worked out. Right action takes place. All that good stuff.
And that's how the process works. Where, as a writer, you have to be renewed every year. So it's a 12-month deal, or however long. There's no longer guaranteed work on the show.
No. Yeah. I mean, everyone's basically on the cast members sign, I think, 7-year contracts. But it's always a year. They can fire you at any time. Like with writers, I think it's often especially the first year is like a 1 year and we'll see type of thing for everybody across the board. So, and every year people have to stay and people have to go, and it's oftentimes numbers. Yeah. So yeah, everyone's on 1 year contracts.
How is the money as a writer on the show? I mean, could you live comfortably in New York, or was it still a challenge?
I mean, I could. I'll say this: it's the most money I ever made in my life. Like, I mean, I think that other people have complained. People that have written on like sitcoms have like complained that it's like not very good. Like compared to if you're like writing on a network's show like Ghosts or something, like you make a lot more money on that. But it was like I could live comfortably and pay like a New York City apartment. But even like I would go to like some cast members' apartments who've been on the show for a long time, and like, you're 5-6 years in and you're still living in like a 1-bedroom apartment, like oftentimes in Chelsea or whatever. Once you're there for like a bit longer, you can start to afford like nicer places and get like actual celebrity money. But first year writers, I can't remember. It was like, it's not much, like $4,500 an episode or something like that, which is like a lot of money. Like, and I was like, great. Like, it might have been less. It might have been 3,000. I honestly don't really remember. But then you also got residuals too. So once you wrote on a few episodes and then you had a break, they'd show reruns, and then you get more money for the reruns. So that was fucking awesome. Yeah, and there were times where we get residual checks that were bigger than our paychecks, like over Christmas or something. You get back and you get this big fat fucking check. A friend of mine, we were all some new people were like complaining about like not getting our stuff in, like, or what stuff getting cut when whatever, and then like everything at SNL works like it did in the 1970s, basically. So there's a woman that comes around and hands you your paycheck.
Wow.
And so like she came, we were all like kind of being bitter or whatever about like not getting like something, the friend's thing getting cut. And then he opened his paycheck and he was like, cut my shit. I don't give a fuck. Like, and that is like, I mean, it was great. Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah, it was the first being in New York for the first time, having like money in my pocket for the first time in my entire life was like great. I remember I was like, I was talking to friends of the show and I was like, I'm thinking about getting this jacket, but I don't know. It's like $90. And they were like, so you mean it's cheap? Because they've been there for a little bit. And I was like, oh yeah, I can afford to buy a $90. That's a normal price for a jacket. Yeah. It's even pretty cheap probably. Yeah, it was great. I'm doing the thing that I listen to other people, and I was like, don't do this. Don't just fucking talk for 20 minutes straight. Let him get a couple words and ask you questions. And now I'm doing exactly that.
Well, if I'm understanding the math correctly, that's a six-figure salary or a six-figure job. I don't know how many episodes there are every year, but if you're making $3,000 an episode, I don't know how many episodes there are per year, but is that, probably with residuals like you were making $150,000, $200,000 a year?
Probably, yeah. Probably around 200,000.
200,000.
Yeah, which was, great.
Yeah.
I never made that kind of money. B, if you work on other shows, you make twice that. And then, but if you've been there, like, some writers had been working at the show for 20 years and they were making way more than, they were probably in, I'm sure some people's salaries are over $1 million there.
Wow.
Like Keenan, I bet gets over $1 million a year, but like, and maybe people that have been there forever. We were trying to play a game at one point, like who do you think that we work with is a full on millionaire, and who is like, what's the line between millionaire and not a millionaire? Yeah, but it's, I mean, the money was great for me, but again, at the lower end of like entertainment money, like. And same with cast members, actually, first year cast members, because I don't know what it is now. At the time, the deal was that they made a little bit less than the first year writers.
Really?
I think just because the WGA had negotiated it more recently or something. I don't remember, but it wasn't much less, but it was a little bit less. And then, but I think their scale is higher, like the more. And I think, if I had lasted another year, I can't remember what the deal was, but it was like significant. It was like almost twice as much money or something like that. But
so what did you do after that experience was up? I mean, I would imagine that would have been really difficult to deal with for a while.
Yeah.
What did you're still here. How did you go about surviving in New York?
It was definitely emotionally, it was a big blow. Because for the last year, my identity had been like, oh yeah, I write for SNL. Like, and not only do I write for SNL, I got a little bit of like attention for it, like from the outside world. Like people were writing articles about my sketches. I got to, meet. I wrote a sketch. My friends and I wrote a sketch about the band Weezer is my favorite band. And I got to meet Weezer. Yeah. But Weezer is my favorite band, so I got to meet Weezer. Like, so it felt really cool. And then like it felt. At the end of the year, I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm definitely coming back, because I knew that plenty of people had only been there 1 year, and I was really trying to do the thing of like, yeah, this is it. If this is as far as it goes, that's fine. But it was easier to say than do, to be like totally okay. Also, once again, I couldn't work with my agent, so I couldn't like just go out and like get another job. But we were able to work with managers, so I got hooked up with my manager, which was great. Wonderful, still with her to this day. And it was just kind of like a little bit starting over. You want to not mentally, I didn't want to start over because I'd already gotten to this place, but it was important to. So I just got like working on like writing a pilot, trying to get staffed, all this stuff. And then working on like getting back. I had more time so I could like perform a little bit more. And since I was in New York, I was like, okay, everyone here does stand up. I'll try start doing a little bit more stand up. Yeah. And then, what was it? 6 months later, COVID started or something like that. So, real quick though, I was like, I could move to LA and it would be, because at the time when I first moved here, I didn't really love New York. I liked it and I had a lot of fun, but I had come from Chicago, which was so welcoming and a really lovely place to be. And then I came to New York and it was difficult. It was like a hard place to live. Like the trains are hot, stinky. Everything's so expensive. So it took me time to like really fall in love with the city. And there was the question of like, oh, should I move to LA? Another friend of mine whose contract also didn't get renewed moved to LA. And there's more opportunities in LA for writers than there are here oftentimes. But there was a thing in my brain of like, I didn't want my only experience of New York City to be at SNL. I did want to know what it was like to live here and to be entrenched in the comedy scene. And working on getting better and trying to get projects made, and just see what that life in New York is. And so I did decide, I wanted to say, there's, a little bit of it. It was like, you're not going to fucking beat me. Like, I can fucking do this. Yeah. And so that was a very conscious choice to stay. And also, like, when I moved here, I didn't, and this was where, like, a lot of my friends works. A lot of Chicago people had moved out here and to LA, but, like, it felt like my apartment. I also had a good apartment that I didn't want to really give up. But yeah, it felt like I didn't want to just come here, work for a year at SNL, and then, like, move away. I wanted to be here for a while. Yeah, and then not that long after COVID started, and that was, obviously scary and weird, but then it was a good opportunity to sit down and, like, write. And, like, I had never written a pilot before, so, like, start working on pilots. I wrote one that was more like of a sample to see if I could do it, and then I wrote another one, and we pitched that around, like, during COVID, like an animated show. Got producers on board, which was exciting, and learned that whole process of, like, how to get a show made. Didn't end up selling to any networks. Came very close, as everyone will say, like, oh my God, it almost went. And then and then all the time, like, still, like, doing Zoom shows as much as I could. Once stuff started opening up again, started doing shows. And, like, trying to, like, establish a life in New York. During that time, I was, like, existing on residuals because of the residuals were still pretty good for, like, a while. And then once that COVID unemployment came in, oh baby, that was wonderful. Fucking incredible. And then there came a time at the end of, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I'll have, like, another job by then. But then, like, COVID strikes, whatever, like, just didn't happen, wasn't happening. So then I did probably 2022 or 23, probably 23, would do odd jobs and stuff, get whatever, like, book commercials or some things, like, make a short with Comedy Central or something like that, get paid a little bit of money. But then it was like a time, like, I got to figure something the fuck out because New York has drained all my money. I probably, if I was living in Chicago and I had this amount of money saved up, I probably could have lasted another couple of years on that. But because, you had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars in rent every month, it depleted fast. And so then I started doing, like, a little bit of copywriting, which was, even then, it's like, okay, now I got to fucking break into a whole different industry. And then there's, like, a shame thing of, like, okay, I worked at SNL and now I have to get, like, a day job. Like, it sucks. Like, it's a bad feeling. But it was just a thing that I had to, like, swallow and, like, do, because it was like, oh yeah, the reality, like, I don't have I don't come from any amount of money. Like, I at the time was making way more money than my mom. Like, and there's no one that can, like, bail me out of this, basically. So I had to, and I wish there were, because if there was someone saying, like, hey, I know I don't want to give you charity, and I would have been like, give me charity, please. I would love the charity. Anyway, so I started doing copywriting, mostly part-time, and then got to the point where I needed to get a full-time job. So I got a full-time copywriting job, which, again, ego hit, and I hated it. This also was the thing. I've done, like, some freelance copywriting work that's very, very fun. But then, this one was just like, people are very nice. Really liked everyone I worked with, but I just couldn't stand it. It was like the most boring, like, corporate thing in the world. And then just at some point, like, we're jumping back and forth in timeline here, but, like, 6 months ago or so, like, I had gotten to a point again. I was like, okay, I can survive for a few months without a job now. So, and this job is, like, taking all my, because when you're copywriting, it's not super creative, but it was like, I am writing all day, and it's sapping some of the energy that I would rather be putting elsewhere into other projects. And yeah, so I quit that kind of leap of faithy without having anything else lined up to go back to, like, where I was back in, like, 2021, which was, like, all the time in the world, and working really hard on creative projects that were going somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's basically where I am now. It's like and now I've worked up, you know, I'll get commercial auditions, get bit parts on TV shows or whatever to, you know, to get some money in, but it's really not, you know, not paying the bills all the way. I am like depleting savings at the moment.
Yeah.
But I have some plans. It'll all work. And then also creatively in that time, working on many like pilots, pitching. I'm in a good position where I can write something, and then I have the network of people that I can go to pitch shows, and like, which is great. Like, I feel very lucky and blessed to be in a position of like, I have an idea, let's try to get it made. You know, the industry is in a place right now where not a lot of new things, and especially not a lot of original ideas, are getting made. But I enjoy the process of doing that and beating my head against the wall in order to do that stuff. And then in the meantime, like, I think I had said that I had started doing a lot more stand-up, like, once stuff started opening up again. But since then, UCB opened up, and I like, and I started doing more like stuff at BCC, and I kind of reconnected with improv a lot. So like, you know, it's easy to forget. Oh yeah, I spent like the first 10 years of my comedy career just doing improv, basically. And it's been a very, very fun to reconnect with improv, and also find outlets like the show that you saw, like the Betty Team, where I can like have a monthly character and have like a pretty built-in audience, and work really hard with really funny people to like create something new every single month. So that's been very, very fun. Yeah. Again, screamed at you for 45 minutes straight.
The last question I would love to ask, and I try to ask this of every guest as well, is about how you think about the word success as it applies to you. I mean, you just went over the arc of your career, and in, you know, 10, 15, 20 years or so, like, you've been at this a while. What is a successful career look like to you? Maybe it's the one you're living currently, but what if we were to forecast into the next 6 months, you know, a year, a few years, what does that word mean to you? How do you think about it?
There's the healthy version and the unhealthy version. And I think sometimes when I start, you know, this is toxic of me, but when I start to veer into the healthy version of success, I try to convince myself back of the unhealthy version, because the truth is I do want like material success where I'm like, yeah, and it has changed a ton over the years. I'll give two thoughts on it. One is that like, I'm making a good living doing comedy. Yeah. In whatever capacity that takes, you know, in my, you know, writing a show, producing a show, writing on someone else's show right now, like, that would be great. Yes. There's one version of success where like, I created a show, I have a small part in the show where I get to come in every 2 episodes and be really funny and then leave, and I become big famous Hollywood guy is one version of the success, and that is like always there. The other version is, well, okay, I'll tell this brief tangent, but when I was in Chicago, I was in a podcast called the Improvised Star Trek Podcast, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We improvised episodes of podcast, and listeners are soaking their jeans right now, even just thinking of the possibility of an improvised Star Trek podcast. But the people that I did that podcast with, they were a little bit older than me. They had started off, you know, doing improv in Chicago, probably maybe 8 or 9 or 10 years before I did. So they were probably in their early to mid 30s when I was in my mid 20s. And a lot of them had a really, you know, good paying like tech job in Chicago. We're buying houses, we're buying condos, buying apartments. We're at this next stage in their life where they were like, you know, focused on their like career at their companies and this section. And then they also, you know, they had probably stopped performing at the theaters as much, but then had this side project that they put a lot of effort and work into, and it was really satisfying. And it showed me like a possibility of life that I didn't think of. But it is also like the model of art that I grew up with, where I grew up kind of like near a lot of hippies and in a very rural part of California. As we talked for like an hour before we started recording, but get all of this. But there were people who were like potters, or they were like a teacher at the school, but then they also like painted or whatever. And that's like a thing, a kind of artistic life that I feel just with the internet and like with such heights around us, and especially in New York, where you can kind of be like, oh, well, you're a painter, but are you in the fucking Louvre or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, or you're a comedian, but like, oh, you perform once a month at this thing. Like, are you really successful? And it's just not, there is another life that can be fulfilling, where art is a portion of it that gives you a lot of meaning, but it's not your career that you are sustained by.
Yeah.
It's a healthy outlet for expression, and some really wonderful things can be made that way. That being said, I am so unique and perfect that I deserve success for my art. No, but I have tried the other way, and it's maybe there is a job I could do that would be satisfying, but it really wasn't. And I am very fulfilled when I'm sustaining myself via art.
Yeah.
And via comedy specifically, which is the specific brand of art that I love. And I was, I think, probably spurned by listening to a couple of other podcasts of yours in preparation for this, but was talking to people about this recently, and it is like, it's the question of like, if I didn't get paid for this, would I still do this? And I think, the answer is absolutely. I don't think during COVID was difficult. I was writing more than I ever had, which was great, but like not being able to perform for people was like difficult. Like, and to the point that when I did finally get, when we were allowed back on stages and stuff, like, it was really wonderful. And it was so much fun. And you just remember like, oh yes, this is like the thing that I live for.
Yeah.
The thing that like, when I was in a high school play or whatever, like in a, when I was in a 4th grade play that happened like in the mobile unit of the classroom, like this was like the thing that I really loved. That it would be hard. I can't imagine going the rest of my life and only going to like, the office or something like that every day, and not having some outlet in my life that would be that. So like if God, if our Lord Jesus Christ came down himself and said, you can't do comedy anymore, it would be I would be a much less happy person. And I am, I've been blessed that I have been able to spend my entire adult life doing comedy. Like it's the thing that drove me to Chicago, and it's like in college I was a theater major, and there was a period where I was like just as much in love with improv as I was with like Shakespearean acting. Like I loved Shakespeare at the time. We did like a touring Shakespeare company in college, where we toured around to schools. It was really wonderful and fulfilling. I got deep into like Shakespeare shit. But then I moved to Chicago kind of with the intention of like, oh, I'm going to pursue both Shakespearean acting and improv. But then couple months in, I was like, no, I like, as much as I love Shakespeare, the improv is like, it's a drug, and it's like the most fun anyone can have. And when it's a show with great people that you love and care about, and you're all working towards this singular goal, it's like the most beautiful, fun thing in the world. And, and even though I've rarely been paid to do fucking improv in my life. It's happened, but not a ton. It's still that spirit of it that I love. So I'd be doing improv even if I lived, if I lived in, what's an obscure city? Like if I lived in Barstow, California, I'd start an improv theater or whatever. The one guy from Barstow is going like, "Oh my god!" Anyway, but so maybe there is an improv theater in Barstow, and if there is, I apologize. I apologize to Gnarled Tree Improv or whatever you're called. Anyway, but yes, and even though most of my art and the things that I tried to get made, and like, comedy wise is all writing and stuff and like film and TV, the improv, I think, would be a necessary outlet. No matter, even when I was at SNL, I was trying to do improv shows like on Sunday nights or whatever. Yeah, it's just a thing that it's fun to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Dude, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.